Lena was a young woman who worked as a waitress in a small diner at the edge of the city. Every day she wore the same uniform, a plain white shirt and a black apron, and tied her hair back so it would not fall on the trays she carried. The diner was not fancy, but it was always busy with workers, students, and people passing through. Lena moved quickly from one table to another, balancing plates of food, pouring coffee, and smiling politely even when her feet hurt. She had learned long ago that kindness made the work lighter, even when the shifts were long. Her life was simple but full of responsibility. She lived with her younger brother, Sam, in a small apartment not far from the diner. Their parents had passed away years ago, and Lena had become both sister and guardian. Sam was still in school, and Lena made sure he had food, books, and a chance to dream bigger than she ever could. She did not complain, though sometimes she wished life would give her something better. One rainy evening, after finishing her late shift, Lena walked home through the dimly lit streets. The city was quiet except for the sound of cars rushing by on the wet road. She was tired, but as she neared her building, her phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, and she hesitated before answering. On the other end was a woman with a calm but urgent voice from the local hospital. They explained there had been a terrible accident and the hospital was running short of a specific blood type. They had gone through the donor list and found Lena's name matched. They asked if she could come immediately. Lena's heart raced. She had signed up for the blood donor program months ago but never expected to be called in such an emergency. Without thinking too long, she agreed. She left her grocery bag with the building guard and hurried to the hospital. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Nurses rushed down hallways, doctors gave quick instructions, and the air smelled strongly of antiseptic. A nurse led her to a small room where she was quickly tested and prepared. The nurse told her she was a perfect match for a patient who had lost a lot of blood in an accident. They didn't say much more, only that it was serious and time was critical. Lena sat quietly as the needle was placed into her arm, watching her blood fill the bag. She wondered who the patient was, what had happened to them, and if they had family waiting outside. For a moment, she thought of her own brother. If Sam were ever in danger, she hoped someone would step forward without hesitation. That thought gave her peace. As the donation finished, she felt a little weak but calm. The nurse thanked her warmly, assuring her she had likely saved a life that night. But Lena did not stay to ask questions or meet anyone. She simply nodded, smiled faintly, and left the hospital. For her, it was enough to know she had done the right thing. She never imagined this single act would link her life to someone she had never met. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the streets were glistening under the dim light of the lamps. Lena pulled her jacket tighter and walked slowly back to her apartment. Her thoughts were quiet, and she told herself she would keep the night as a secret between her and her heart. She had no idea that the patient receiving her blood was not an ordinary man but someone whose name filled newspapers and whose wealth touched nearly every corner of the city. At the same time, inside the hospital's intensive care unit, a man lay unconscious, surrounded by machines and worried doctors. His injuries were serious, and without the blood donation, he might not have survived. The man's name was Adrian Cross, a billionaire businessman known for his investments, charities, and a lifestyle far removed from the world Lena knew. Yet in that moment, wealth and status meant nothing, only the kindness of a stranger stood between him and death. The doctors worked through the night, stabilizing him, using the blood Lena had given. Hours later, his heartbeat grew stronger, and the medical team sighed with relief. Adrian Cross had been pulled back from the edge, though he remained unaware of the woman who had quietly saved him and walked away without recognition or reward. Back in her apartment, Lena sat with her brother, serving him a simple dinner of rice and vegetables. Sam chattered about his school day, his excitement filling the small kitchen. Lena smiled, listening closely, nodding at every detail. She never mentioned where she had been or what she had done just an hour earlier. To her, it did not matter if anyone knew. What mattered was that someone, somewhere, had a second chance to live. That night, as she lay in bed, her tired body sinking into the thin mattress, Lena thought for a moment about the stranger in the hospital bed. She whispered a quiet wish for his recovery, then drifted into sleep. She believed the night was already behind her, but fate was only beginning to weave the threads that would change her life forever. Weeks passed after the night Lena had donated her blood. Life returned to its usual rhythm. The diner was as busy as ever, filled with customers who came for breakfast, lunch, or a late dinner. Lena moved from table to table, balancing trays with skill and patience. She still smiled at the regulars, remembered their favorite orders, and listened to their small stories. To her, this was more than work, it was connection. Even if her own life was quiet and routine, she could bring a little warmth to the people around her. Her brother Sam continued with school, his laughter echoing through their small apartment whenever he came home. Lena often helped him with his homework, asking questions she barely remembered from her own school days. She encouraged him to dream big, to aim for things she herself had never been able to pursue. Sam loved to talk about the future, how he wanted to travel, study, and maybe even work with people who could make the world a better place. Lena listened, silently proud, even if she sometimes felt a pang of envy for the life he could have that she had missed. The memory of that night at the hospital returned to her occasionally, usually when she was tired and sitting alone after her shift. She wondered if the man she had helped was okay, if he had survived. But each time, she quickly pushed the thought aside. Life was busy, and there were bills to pay, food to cook, and a younger brother to care for. She could not let herself dwell on strangers she would never meet. She had done what she could, and that was enough. Meanwhile, far away from the small diner, the world of Adrian Cross began to stir back to life. After the accident, he had been hidden from public view, recovering in the privacy of his hospital room. News outlets speculated about his condition, with rumors ranging from minor injuries to something more serious. His business associates were cautious, monitoring the markets, making sure his empire continued to function smoothly. Yet behind the headlines, the truth remained unknown. It was a stranger's act of kindness, an ordinary woman who had never even met him, that had kept him alive. Adrian's recovery was slow but steady. Nurses and doctors cared for him around the clock, yet he remained unaware of the woman who had saved his life. His mind was occupied with health, the future of his business, and questions about the fragility of life. Each day, he became more determined to regain his strength, but there was a quiet sense of curiosity in him. He wanted to know who had helped him, who had given him a chance to see another day. The idea that someone ordinary, someone with no ties to his wealth or fame, had changed his fate fascinated him. Lena, on the other hand, continued her routine with little thought of the man she had helped. She still worked late nights, still poured coffee with a smile, still listened to customers talk about their days. Occasionally, a nurse or a friend mentioned hospital emergencies in passing, but she never revealed her own experience. She kept it in her heart as a quiet pride, a secret satisfaction that she had done something meaningful. To Lena, saving a life was not about recognition or reward, it was about compassion, about doing the right thing when no one else could. The city buzzed around her. Streetlights reflected off the wet asphalt, cars honked in traffic, and people rushed from place to place. Yet Lena's world was small, filled with the diner, her apartment, and her brother. She did not care about wealth, fame, or luxury. She cared about honesty, hard work, and the little moments that made life meaningful. When she went to sleep at night, she felt she had done her part, no matter how small it seemed in the grand scheme of the world. Despite her focus on simple life, a subtle change began in the city. News of Adrian Cross's accident gradually shifted to stories about his miraculous recovery. People speculated about who had helped him survive, though no one had answers. Social media posts discussed his absence and hinted at gratitude owed to some anonymous donor. Yet in the diner, Lena never heard a word. She remained untouched by the headlines, her mind anchored to her routine and responsibilities. One evening, After a particularly long day, Lena sat at a corner table with a cup of tea. The diner was nearly empty, except for a few regulars chatting softly. She looked around at the familiar faces, the cashier joking with a customer, the cook wiping the counter, the janitor quietly sweeping the floor. Life went on, ordinary and predictable. She sipped her tea and thought about her brother, wondering how he was doing with his homework. Even in her quiet moments, she felt a sense of fulfillment that came from simple routines, caring for someone she loved, and knowing she had helped another person, even if that person was unknown to her. Unbeknownst to Lena, Adrian had begun his own quiet search. Though he could have hired anyone, he felt that the woman who saved him must be found personally. He wanted to see her, to meet the person who had unknowingly given him a new chance. It was not about gratitude alone, something in her act had touched him deeply, a spark that could not be ignored. He asked questions, made discreet inquiries, and followed leads without revealing his own identity. He was patient, knowing that he needed to approach carefully. Meanwhile, Lena's life continued unchanged. She picked up shifts whenever the diner needed her, sometimes taking double shifts to earn a little extra money. She bought groceries carefully, counted her coins for bus fares, and made sure Sam had everything he needed. Her small world seemed contained and safe, yet she was ready to step up whenever life called for it. That readiness had already shaped someone's destiny, though she did not know it. Evenings in her apartment were quiet but comforting. Lena and Sam would share simple meals, laugh over small jokes, and talk about dreams that felt far away but kept hope alive. She reminded Sam to study, encouraged him to pursue his passions, and sometimes imagined a life different from hers. She did not know that the man she had helped, whose world was full of riches and influence, would soon become part of that imagined future. One rainy afternoon, while cleaning tables at the diner, Lena overheard a couple of customers talking about a recent billionaire accident. They whispered names and speculated about the recovery. Lena listened quietly, but she could not connect herself to the story. It was someone else's life, someone else's world. She returned to her work, wiping counters and pouring coffee, her mind clear and focused. Life, in her eyes, was about kindness, responsibility, and small acts of care, not headlines or wealth. Her simplicity, however, had created a ripple she could not see. Adrian Cross, slowly regaining health and strength, felt the pull to find the woman whose generosity had unknowingly saved him. He understood that ordinary people often possessed extraordinary courage. Lena, with her quiet life and selfless heart, embodied that courage without realizing it. She continued her routine, but unknowingly, her story had already begun to intersect with someone from a world she could never have imagined. And so, life went on. Lena continued to serve coffee, wipe tables, and care for her brother. Adrian, recovering in the luxury of his hidden hospital room, planned quietly, determined to seek out the woman who had changed his life. The connection was invisible, yet unbreakable, like threads drawn across two worlds. Lena did not know it yet, but her simple, unassuming life was about to collide with wealth, gratitude, and a future she could never have imagined. Days turned into weeks, and Lena's life continued its quiet rhythm. She moved through the diner as if it were a stage she knew by heart, pouring coffee, taking orders, smiling at customers, and wiping tables until they sparkled. The routine was comforting in its predictability. But unknown to her, the calm of her ordinary world was about to be stirred by someone extraordinary. Adrian Cross had finally decided that he could no longer wait. He wanted to find the woman who had saved him, not as a distant gesture, but in person. He believed that gratitude was best expressed directly, face to face. While he had assistants and private investigators who could trace almost anyone in the city, Adrian wanted this search to be personal. He wanted to see her reaction, to know her story, and to thank her in a way that was sincere and meaningful. After days of careful inquiry, a lead brought him to the diner where Lena worked. The information was precise enough to narrow down her location, but Adrian did not rush. He understood the value of patience and discretion. He wanted this encounter to feel natural, not like a sudden intrusion into her life. So, he made a plan. He would visit the diner as a customer, quietly observing, and wait for the right moment to approach her. On a bright, clear morning, Adrian walked into the diner, blending in with the other patrons. He wore simple clothes, far from the designer suits and polished shoes he was known for. He did not want to intimidate anyone or draw attention to himself. He simply wanted to see her, to witness the woman who had unknowingly changed his life. Lena was busy serving breakfast orders, her hands moving swiftly, her attention divided among the tables. The moment Adrian saw her, he was struck by something unexpected. It wasn't just her appearance, though she had a warmth in her smile and a sparkle in her eyes that made her instantly memorable. It was the care she put into her work, the way she listened to the customers, the small gestures that made everyone feel welcome. He realized that it wasn't just the act of saving him that mattered, it was the kindness embedded in every part of her life. Lena noticed a new customer sitting quietly at a corner table. He seemed different from the usual crowd, polished but understated, observing the room with calm curiosity. She approached him with a gentle smile, asking if he wanted coffee or breakfast. Adrian's voice was calm, polite, and unassuming as he ordered a simple meal. He did not reveal who he was, but he watched her as she moved around, serving others, chatting with regulars, and handling problems with ease. For Adrian, every movement of hers was a lesson in humility and grace. He marveled at the way she treated everyone with respect, regardless of who they were. It reminded him that life was not measured by wealth, power, or fame, but by the impact one had on others through simple, sincere actions. He felt a growing admiration for her, realizing that her heart was as remarkable as her courage had been that night in the hospital. After finishing his meal, Adrian decided to leave a tip that was far more generous than the usual. He wanted to make sure she understood that someone appreciated her, even if he could not yet reveal his identity. Lena was surprised when she saw the tip. It was enough to cover her rent for a week, and it came with a simple note: "Your kindness matters." "Thank you." She felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. Who could have left this? Days passed, and Adrian returned, each time choosing a different seat, never revealing too much, always observing quietly. Lena began to notice a pattern: a polite, quiet customer who seemed interested in more than just the food. She found herself curious about him, wondering what his story was. There was a calmness about him, a sincerity that stood out in a world where most people were focused on themselves. One afternoon, when the diner was nearly empty, Adrian finally approached her directly. He asked for a few minutes of her time, speaking with a gentle confidence that immediately put her at ease. Lena, polite but cautious, agreed. They sat at a small table in the corner, away from the hustle and bustle, and Adrian began to speak. He thanked her for her kindness in a way that made her pause. He described the night she had donated blood, how her selfless act had saved a life, and how deeply it had impacted him. Lena listened, astonished. She had never expected any recognition, let alone such detailed knowledge of the event. Her heart raced, and she struggled to find words. I didn't do anything special," she said softly. I just did what I thought was right." Adrian smiled, understanding her humility. "You saved my life," he said simply. "That's more than most people can ever claim. You didn't know me, you didn't care about my wealth or my position. You acted with pure kindness, and for that, I am eternally grateful." Lena's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that a simple act of generosity could have such profound consequences. She had never thought that her life, ordinary, quiet, and modest, could intersect with someone from a world so different from hers. And yet, here he was, a living reminder that small acts could change destinies. Adrian paused for a moment, choosing his next words carefully. He did not want to intimidate her with his wealth or status. Instead, he focused on the connection they had forged through an act of compassion. "I came here not as a billionaire, but as a man who owes his life to you," he said. "I want to know you, to understand the person who gave me this chance. I want to meet your world, not with power, but with respect and admiration." Lena was still in shock, but she felt a strange sense of trust. There was something genuine about him, something that transcended money or social status. She nodded slowly, willing to give him a chance to explain, to share his story, to bridge the gap between their worlds. Over the next several weeks, their encounters became more frequent. Adrian found ways to spend time with her outside the diner, always careful not to overwhelm her. They talked about their lives, their dreams, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. Lena learned that behind the billionaire title was a man who valued honesty, courage, and kindness above all else. Adrian discovered that Lena's simplicity was not weakness but strength and ability to find joy in the ordinary and to act with compassion without expecting anything in return. Their friendship deepened, built on mutual respect and admiration. Adrian admired Lena's courage, not just for saving his life, but for the way she faced challenges every day with grace. Lena admired Adrian's humility, his willingness to recognize the value of ordinary acts, and his dedication to using his influence for good. Together, they found a connection that transcended social class, wealth, or background. And so, the ordinary waitress who had once quietly helped a stranger began to change the life of a man who had everything. The billionaire, who could have taken anything from the world, chose to give something more meaningful: attention, respect, and the beginning of a bond that neither money nor fame could define. Lena's world was no longer just the diner in her small apartment. It was expanding, slowly, beautifully, to include possibilities she had never imagined. Little did Lena know, the journey that had begun with a simple act of kindness was only getting started. The billionaire who owed his life to her was preparing to show that gratitude could be life-changing in ways far beyond what she had ever dreamed. And as she continued her quiet, humble life, she was about to step into a story that would transform her world forever. As the weeks went by, Lena's world began to feel a little larger, brighter, and more exciting. The routine of the diner remained comforting, yet it was now punctuated by moments of anticipation. Each time Adrian visited, her heart would flutter, a mix of curiosity, excitement, and the faint nervousness of someone whose life was slowly intersecting with a world she had never imagined. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, the easy laughter they shared, and the thoughtful gestures that seemed to come naturally from him. Adrian, for his part, had never felt so connected to another person. He had spent years surrounded by wealth, power, and influence, yet nothing in his life had given him the simple joy and genuine companionship that Lena brought. He admired her humility, her courage, and the way she treated everyone with kindness, regardless of their social status or wealth. To him, she was a revelation, a reminder that the heart mattered far more than any material possession. One evening, after the diner had closed and Lena was finishing up her cleaning, Adrian appeared outside, leaning casually against his car. He had a calm, confident presence that was different from anything Lena had encountered before. She was surprised but not startled. Somehow, she had come to expect his appearances, even if she did not fully understand their timing or purpose. "Lena," he said softly as she stepped outside, brushing her hands on her apron. "Do you have a few minutes? I want to talk to you properly, without the rush of the diner or the noise of customers." Lena nodded, curious but cautious. She had come to trust him in a way that felt natural, yet there was still a part of her that wondered why a man like Adrian, someone from a world so far removed from hers, had taken such a personal interest in her life. "Of course," she replied, her voice steady but tinged with curiosity. They walked a short distance to a small park nearby, a quiet spot with benches and soft, golden light filtering through the trees. Adrian gestured for her to sit, and they both took a seat on a wooden bench. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the distant sounds of the city and feeling the calm of the evening. Adrian took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. Lena, he began, his voice gentle but serious, I've been thinking a lot about how to say this, because words can sometimes fall short of what I feel. I want you to know that I am truly grateful to you not just for what you did, but for who you are. Lena's heart began to beat faster. She had expected gratitude, perhaps even a gift, but there was something in his tone that suggested this was different. I don't know what to say, she admitted softly. I did what anyone would do. It wasn't special. Adrian shook his head with a faint smile. It was special, he said firmly. Because most people would hesitate, worry about themselves, or turn away. You didn't. You acted with courage, selflessness, and a kind heart. That matters more than you realize. He paused, his eyes meeting hers with intensity and sincerity. And Lena, I don't want to stop there. I don't want this to be just a moment in time that we remember. I want to be a part of your life, not as a distant stranger or a wealthy man who can offer money or gifts, but as someone who truly cares for you. Lena felt a mixture of surprise and disbelief. She had known that Adrian had been grateful, but she had not expected this. Her mind raced with questions, was this really happening? Could someone from such a different world genuinely care for her? Could she trust this feeling that was so new and unfamiliar? Adrian seemed to sense her hesitation. He leaned slightly closer, his voice softening. I don't want to overwhelm you, Lena. I know our worlds are different. I know this might feel sudden or strange. But I want you to know that my feelings are real, and I am willing to take things slowly, at your pace. I just couldn't let another day pass without telling you. Lena's eyes glistened with tears. She had never imagined that an act she had thought of as simple kindness could lead to this someone who not only recognized her worth but wanted to be part of her life. I don't know what to say, she whispered. I never expected any of this. Adrian smiled gently, placing a hand over hers. You don't need to say anything right now, he said. Just know that I am here, and I will respect your pace, your choices, and your world. I only hope that you will give me a chance to show you how much you mean to me. For the first time in her life, Lena felt a sense of possibility opening up before her. It was frightening, yes, entering a world she had never known, trusting someone whose life seemed so far removed from hers, but it was also exhilarating. She realized that she wanted to explore this connection, to see where it could lead, and to allow herself to feel joy without fear. Over the next few days, their meetings became more personal and frequent. Adrian introduced her to small pieces of his world, quiet walks in gardens he owned, visits to art galleries where he quietly observed her reactions, and shared dinners at modest places where they could talk freely without pretense. He never flaunted his wealth or status, and Lena began to see him not as a billionaire, but as a man who valued honesty, courage, and kindness above all else. Lena, in turn, shared her world with him: the diner, her friends, the simple joys of everyday life. She showed him how she found happiness in small victories, in helping customers with a smile, in making someone's day a little brighter. Adrian listened with genuine interest, asking questions, learning about her life, and showing appreciation for the person she was. One evening, as they walked along a quiet street, Adrian stopped and turned to Lena. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped box. Lena looked at him in surprise, unsure what to expect. Adrian's expression was earnest, his eyes reflecting the sincerity of his intentions. Lena, he began, his voice steady but full of emotion, I know this might seem sudden, and I want you to understand that I am not asking for anything you are not ready for. But I want to ask you a question that has been on my mind since the first moment I realized how extraordinary you are. He handed her the box. Inside was a delicate ring, not extravagant or showy, but beautiful in its simplicity, a symbol of thoughtfulness and care. Lena's hands trembled as she looked at it, her mind racing with disbelief and wonder. I know our lives are different, Adrian continued. I know this is not just about wealth or status. I want to be with you, Lena, not because I can offer you anything material, but because I cannot imagine my life without you. Will you let me be a part of your world? Will you accept this as a symbol of my feelings and my commitment to you? Lena felt tears streaming down her cheeks, a mixture of shock, joy, and disbelief. She had never imagined that a simple act of kindness, donating blood to a stranger, could lead to this moment, where her life was being touched by someone whose heart matched the depth of his fortune. She looked at Adrian, truly seeing him for the first time not as a billionaire, but as a man who valued love, respect, and connection above all else. Yes, she whispered finally, her voice breaking with emotion. Yes, I will. Adrian's smile was radiant, full of relief and happiness. He gently slipped the ring onto her finger, a small but powerful gesture that symbolized not just love, but gratitude, respect, and the merging of two worlds. They stood there for a moment, holding hands, feeling the weight and the wonder of what had just happened. From that evening on, their relationship deepened, built on trust, admiration, and a shared understanding of the power of kindness. Lena's world expanded, yes, but it remained rooted in the values that had always defined her: humility, courage, and compassion. Adrian's life, once defined by wealth and power, now found new meaning in love, connection, and the joy of giving. And so, the waitress who had once quietly donated blood to a stranger found herself stepping into a life she had never imagined, one filled with possibilities, love, and the extraordinary reality that sometimes, the simplest acts can change lives forever. After Lena accepted Adrian's proposal, her life began to feel like a dream. Every day brought something new: small surprises, moments of laughter, and a deepening sense of connection she had never experienced before. Yet, despite the whirlwind of emotions, she remained grounded. Lena still worked at the diner part-time, insisting that she wanted to stay connected to her world, to the people she had known all her life. She had changed, yes, but she wanted to change in a way that felt natural, honest, and true to herself. Adrian understood this completely. He never pressured her to leave the diner or to adopt a lifestyle she wasn't comfortable with. Instead, he found ways to support her dreams, to celebrate her achievements, and to show her that love was not about control or dominance, but about encouragement, respect, and shared joy. He often visited her at the diner, not with gifts or displays of wealth, but with genuine interest in her day, her customers, and the small victories that made her heart happy. One morning, Lena arrived at work to find the diner unusually quiet. She thought perhaps it was a slow day, but as she walked inside, she noticed a small bouquet of her favorite flowers on the counter, with a note in elegant handwriting. It read, "For the woman who changed my life with a single act of kindness. Adrian." She smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Even after all these weeks, he found ways to make her feel special, appreciated, and loved. Their relationship continued to grow naturally. They shared quiet evenings together, sometimes in Adrian's home, sometimes simply walking in the park or sitting on the rooftop of a nearby building, watching the sunset over the city. In those moments, wealth and social status seemed irrelevant. All that mattered was the connection they had built, the trust they had nurtured, and the joy they found in each other's company. As months passed, Lena began to notice subtle changes in herself as well. She felt more confident, empowered, and ready to embrace opportunities she had once thought beyond her reach. Adrian encouraged her to take classes she had always wanted to explore, to develop skills she had never believed possible, and to pursue dreams she had kept hidden, thinking they were unattainable. With his support, she discovered that her courage and determination could open doors she had never imagined. Adrian, too, found himself transformed by Lena's presence in his life. He had been accustomed to a world where people often saw him as a title, a figure of power, or a source of wealth. Lena saw him as a person, and that perspective changed everything. He began to appreciate the simple pleasures of life: the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the laughter of friends gathered around a table, the joy of giving without expecting anything in return. Her influence made him softer, more compassionate, and more willing to embrace vulnerability. One afternoon, they attended a charity event together, an event Adrian had been involved in for years. Lena had never attended such gatherings, and she was initially overwhelmed by the grandeur and sophistication of the crowd. Yet, Adrian remained by her side, introducing her to people, explaining the causes they supported, and ensuring that she felt comfortable and included. Lena's sincerity and genuine interest in the work impressed everyone, and she quickly became a favorite among the organizers and attendees. After the event, as they walked back to the car, Lena looked up at Adrian, her eyes shining with excitement. "I never imagined that I could belong in this world," she admitted, her voice soft but confident. "But with you, I feel like I can be myself, and that makes all the difference." Adrian smiled, holding her hand tightly. "You belong anywhere you want to, Lena," he replied. "You've brought light into my life, and I want to make sure you always feel supported, loved, and appreciated. This world, your world, they are both part of the journey we are on together." The seasons changed, and with each passing day, Lena and Adrian's bond deepened. They faced challenges, of course, curious onlookers, skeptical friends, and the occasional misstep, but their trust in each other remained unwavering. Lena learned to navigate the complexities of Adrian's world, while Adrian learned to appreciate the authenticity and simplicity that defined Lena's life. Together, they built a bridge between two very different worlds, one that was strong, resilient, and filled with love. One winter evening, Adrian suggested they take a short trip to the countryside. Lena had never been on a luxurious getaway before, and she was thrilled at the idea, though she insisted on keeping the itinerary simple. Adrian, respecting her wishes, arranged a cozy cabin by a frozen lake, with warm fires, homemade meals, and quiet nights under the stars. They spent hours talking about their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. During one such evening, as snowflakes fell gently outside the cabin window, Adrian turned to Lena with a serious expression. "Lena, I've been thinking," he began. "We have built something beautiful together, something real, and I want to ensure that we can continue this journey without fear, without doubt, and with complete trust. I want to take the next step with you, not because it's expected, but because it feels right for us." Lena's heart raced, remembering the first time he had asked her to accept his commitment. She realized that their relationship had grown stronger, deeper, and more meaningful since that moment. "Adrian," she said softly, "I feel the same way. I trust you, I love you, and I want to take this journey with you, wherever it leads." Adrian smiled, taking her hands in his, and together they planned a future that balanced both of their worlds. They talked about living arrangements, shared dreams, and how to support each other's goals. They laughed about their differences, celebrated their similarities, and promised to face challenges as a team, knowing that love, trust, and respect would guide them through anything. As the years went by, Lena and Adrian became inseparable, not just as a couple, but as partners in life. Lena's confidence grew, and she pursued opportunities that allowed her to make a difference in her community, often alongside Adrian. Together, they contributed to causes that mattered to them, using their resources, skills, and voices to help others. Lena never lost her humility or her sense of purpose, and Adrian never stopped appreciating the simple, genuine joy she brought to his life. Their story became known to friends, family, and even the wider community not as a tale of wealth or fortune, but as a story of kindness, courage, and the extraordinary impact of a single selfless act. People marveled at how a simple gesture donating blood to a stranger could change the course of two lives forever. Yet for Lena and Adrian, it was never about recognition or admiration. It was about the quiet, profound truth that love could blossom in unexpected places and that genuine connection mattered more than anything else in the world. Years later, as they celebrated milestones, achievements, and quiet moments of togetherness, Lena often reflected on that day at the hospital, the moment she had chosen to give without thinking of herself. She realized that life had a way of rewarding courage, humility, and kindness, not always in ways one could predict, but in ways that brought profound fulfillment and joy. Adrian's presence in her life was a constant reminder that true love transcends wealth, status, or circumstance. It is about seeing, appreciating, and valuing another human being for who they truly are. Together, Lena and Adrian built a life that was rich in meaning, love, and shared experiences. They faced challenges, celebrated victories, and nurtured a bond that grew stronger with every passing day. They laughed, cried, dreamed, and built memories that would last a lifetime. And through it all, they never forgot the simple act that had brought them together: the quiet courage of a waitress who had chosen to help a stranger, and the man who recognized and cherished her extraordinary heart. In the end, their story was not about wealth, fame, or status. It was about the transformative power of kindness, the beauty of genuine connection, and the way love can turn a simple act into a life-changing journey. Lena and Adrian lived proof that sometimes, the most ordinary moments carry the seeds of extraordinary possibilities, and that when hearts meet with honesty, respect, and courage, life becomes more beautiful than anyone could ever imagine. And so, the waitress who had once donated blood to a stranger not only saved a life but also discovered a love that changed her world forever. She found a partner who valued her for her heart, supported her dreams, and shared her joy. Together, they created a life that celebrated simplicity, generosity, and the extraordinary magic of human connection. And in every quiet moment, every shared laugh, and every act of love, they remembered that it all began with a single, selfless choice: the choice to care, to give, and to believe in the power of kindness.